Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, May 6th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 116 days, the game against Michigan in 207 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. We're getting surprisingly close to the 1000th episode of this show. I saw that recently and thought that can't possibly be right, but here we are. Turns out we've been doing this for a while. But today we're going to have a first-time guest. He's also now a brand new staff member at BuckeyeHuddle.com. His name is Andrew Ellis. If you are on Twitter, you may know him better as Teddy Heisman. Andrew, welcome to the show, and even more importantly, welcome to the staff at Buckeye Huddle.
Tom, thanks. It's a pleasure to be on here. Honestly, I've been following you and Tony for I can't even tell you how long. I remember the Buckeye Watch back in the day was one of the first columns that I read all the time, and couldn't be happier to be here. There's an awesome community over there. It's really cool to see a lot of names that I saw 20 years ago on Scout.com. So it's just kind of crazy how much things change and also how little they change at the same time. So can't wait to continue talking to you. I've known Jeremy Birmingham for a couple decades now. I talk to Mark all the time, and a bunch of great people over there, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, you mentioned Berm. Berm is also, we've talked about him a couple times on these shows, mentioned that he is going to be, he is already on staff there as well. One of our other new additions at Buckeye Huddle. It has been a very, very busy few days as you guys have come on board, and there has been a big inflow of new members there, folks who have sort of followed you guys, I think, at various previous stops. But for people who might not know you or know your background as much, let people know just a little bit about you and how you came to, follow and be covering Ohio State and just, sort of your career up till now.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is I don't want anyone to think I'm some like super recruiting insider. I save that for the professionals with Mark and Berm. But, I've just kind of been following this closely ever since. I mean, gosh, I remember back in 2001, just going to the grocery store and buying a magazine when it used to have it in magazines. And it was talking about some running back from Youngstown who was probably going to go to Notre Dame. And obviously Maurice Clarett ended up signing with Ohio State. And I've been following this closely since then. And then I kind of got into the Scout.com message boards back in the day. And that seriously was like 20 years ago. It's crazy how time flies. And, I helped out over at 11 Warriors for a bit, and I've been podcasting with Berm ever since then. Again, I don't speak to recruits or now agents and all that crazy stuff you got going on. I just try to follow it as best as I can, kind of from afar, try to keep my finger on the pulse as best as I can. And I like talking to people about it, whether it's you or Berm or all the other members over on Huddle. So here I am.
Here you are. And one of the things that I know you have done in the past is almost sort of been like the voice of the community in some ways, and sort of obviously being on the board a lot, you're answering a lot of the questions, but you're also just seeing the questions that people are asking and sort of what's going on in the minds of Ohio State fans right now. And, at various times in the last 12 months, what's going on in the minds of Ohio State fans, may have gotten you a community warning on YouTube or something like that. But now I think everyone's a little more happy and settled down than they have been at various times in the past. So right now, Ohio State's coming off of a national championship season, just had a bunch of guys get drafted. The vibe's generally pretty good right now. But, it's Ohio State fans. There's always going to be stuff to worry about. So what are the biggest questions that Ohio State fans, or biggest concerns maybe, that Ohio State fans are that you're seeing right now, whether it's on the Huddle or somewhere else online?
Yeah, so if you ask Berm, he'll tell you that I'm a pessimist about Ohio State athletics and I'm an optimist about the Cincinnati Bengals, which is just extremely weird. But I'm not a pessimistic person with Ohio State. Just some of the recruiting stuff I think has haunted fans over the last decade or so. I think I'll start with, Tyler Bowen, I think, has completely changed the perspective of the fan as far as offensive line recruiting. And, we all saw what the offensive line did during that playoff run. And it was phenomenal. So I think if that was, the number one on the list of concerns there for a while, I think that's kind of dwindled down a bit. No one's ever going to be concerned about receiver. We just saw Brian Hartline add another one just yesterday or just a couple days back. I think right now, I think a lot of fans have questions about Larry Johnson. the depth right now, you guys have talked a lot about, and Ryan Day's talked about the portal and defensive tackle depth and things like that. And he's not a spring chicken anymore. So I think you're seeing all these commitments, safeties, and and wide receivers, of course, and cornerbacks over the past few years. But I think defensive line recruiting right now might be the one kind of thorn in the side that people are sort of wondering what's going on. There's all these names, and Mark talks about them all the time with Kevin. There's all these names out there that Ohio State's in a great spot for, but there's just not defensive linemen. It seems like it's just a different game there. And Mark knows this better than anybody. I think Larry Johnson kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. Maybe it's just his age or whatever, but he kind of operates in silence. So you really don't know what's going on there. So I think the lack of commitments on the defensive side of the ball, combined with some of the comments about the defensive tackles in the portal, I would say, if anything, right now, defensive line is the concern. But I mean, the program's coming off a national championship, so it's how concerned are people right now, really?
Well, and yeah, we have talked repeatedly about, the depth at the interior defensive line positions. Yeah, that's a problem. That's you can certainly lose games if you have an injury or something there and you end up shorthanded in the middle of the defensive line. But also, if you were going to rank I think it's 136 FBS teams right now, how many of them would really kill for, this is our biggest concern, is the depth at the interior defensive line positions? I'm guessing it's probably 120 something at the very least, and maybe more than that. So there's a lot of teams that are going, boy, Penn State is as loaded as they can be. And they brought in some wide receivers in the transfer portal, and I still think they probably have some questions that are bigger than what Ohio State has, and they might be one of the favorites to be a national champion this year. So yeah, not terrible. Yeah, it's a concern, but not too desperate of a concern, probably. And I think you also have to remember, longer term, they just brought in 6 defensive linemen this last year, plus brought in a couple guys in the portal. So yeah, you can plaster over some of those concerns. With the defensive line, we'll see. The this year defensive line question mark is a whole separate conversation from the 2026, 2027, where they have had some sort of thin classes there in recent years. So that's sometimes something that takes a couple of years to show up. So that's definitely a legitimate concern. As you said, there were some real concerns about the offensive line just a couple of years ago, and now it feels like between Justin Fry hitting some in-state homers that you didn't necessarily know were going to be home runs at the time, plus some really strong development, plus some 3 portal additions this offseason, I think people are probably feeling reasonably good about that as well moving forward. One group that I think is probably not feeling great is the Michigan fan base. And well, I guess I should correct myself there. They probably shouldn't be feeling good. I don't know how they're feeling. The comments on our live stream, Tony and I did a live stream on Monday morning when Michigan announced a self-imposed 2-game suspension for Sherrone Moore. Will it be the first 2 games of the season? No, he wants to coach those. It'll be the 3rd and 4th games of the season. This is not something the NCAA has given a thumbs up to or anything like this. This is just Michigan saying, so yeah, he deleted some text messages. We're gonna say, what if we do these 2, but the second game is against his alma mater, Oklahoma. He'd really like to coach that. So is it cool if he, has like a delayed suspension for 2 games? The reaction from the Michigan side of things has been 180 degrees from the reaction from some other folks, which has been so interesting to me throughout this whole process. What's your take on the Sherrone Moore 2-game suspension eventually?
I think this entire fiasco is just hilarious. I cannot, there's a lot of great content out there that I like to consume, but this, I feel like just feed it to me, all of it. It's fascinating. I spent my trip back from work today listening to you and Tony earlier. Anybody that hasn't listened to that should. You got to hear Tom do a Sopranos impression and speak like a toddler. So that pretty much made my day and would make anybody's day. I just think the most fascinating part of it is just there are some Ohio State outlets that are saying, oh, the death penalty's coming. It's coming tomorrow, anytime now. And then you have all these Michigan people, saying cheeseburgers. This is nothing. And I think if you want to be a rational Ohio State fan, just understand the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle there. I do think the picking and choosing of your of your games that you're going to be out. I think, missing the Nebraska game is actually probably somewhat significant at least, but I just think it's hilarious how all of this is going, and the way it's been covered, especially by the Michigan side, is I just can't get enough of it. It's hysterical. And I think Michigan fans think, oh, well, every time something like this happens, they think, oh, this is it. This is the end of it. And if you read the report, I mean, my understanding of it was this is nowhere close to being the end of it. This is kind of what we are suggesting. So the NCAA maybe goes a little bit easier on us. My understanding is the end of this isn't going to come until, what is it, early June? They have the hearing, and then I'm guessing it'll be weeks or a month after that. I don't know, but I can't get enough of this. So if there's something written every day about this scandal, I'm going to be all over it, and it's great content.
Yeah, we have been trying to not overdo it with this because every time we do it, we get big numbers on YouTube, and everyone's excited to hear it. But it's like we can't keep saying the same thing every day. So we're going to wait until there's actual news. There was actual news on Monday with the self-imposed 2-game suspension from the University of Michigan for Sherrone Moore. But that was, again, that doesn't deal with the 6 level 1 violations that they're potentially facing in their notice of allegations. That is all going to get sorted out, as Andrew said, June 6th and 7th through a hearing. And then after that, the NCAA will announce sort of the final penalties, and that'll be probably a month, 2 months, something like that. After that, we'll see when that all shakes out. But boy, it has been a fascinating story to follow, and it's going to, I'm sure, continue to be a fascinating story for us to follow in the coming days. And almost even more important, fascinating story to talk about on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. All right, I got to really think through this now because, boy, we have more people on the staff. I always say Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Okay, we got that. That hasn't changed. Got Mark and Berm covering recruiting. Okay, got Andrew on the board. We got Justin. We got Devin. We got Michael. We got Ross doing X's and O's. It is a full house there at BuckeyeHuddle.com, but we will make room for you as well. We will. There's plenty of room on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. We've always described it as a fun and active and relatively drama-free board. It continues to be that, but it is much more active even than it was just a week ago. Been picking up a lot of members. I'm about to mail out the next batch of national championship confetti, probably sometime on Tuesday or Wednesday. So you want to get on that, you should hop on there. Over there right now, sign up to become a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com. First month, just $4.99, and you're going to get all sorts of great stuff. We talked about all this stuff you're getting. Berm has been absolutely killing it on recruiting coverage recently, just in the last few days since he started. And then, of course, we got Mark and Kevin down on their southern swing, talking to all sorts of prospects all across the South. Great, really unique content. You can find that all going on right now at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.